Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to this week's edition of Artist Alchemy. This is the show where we like to look at the artistic process and how things come together and manifest themselves in different ways through artists and other creative thinkers' eyes and hands. So a big welcome to our special guest this week, Mr. Walt Anderson. Walt, great to see you.
Well, really nice to be here.
Walt's a naturalist, a photographer, painter, environmental activist, leader of ecotourism tours, and we'll get into more of those details here as we continue our conversation. Walt's no stranger to the Yuba-Sutter area, although he currently calls Prescott, Arizona, or near Prescott, his home. So, but let's get right into it. How's your life been during the time of COVID, even though we're kind of coming out of it, Walt?
It's actually been pretty good. I feel lucky. I retired from Prescott College, where I taught for 27 years, about 2.5 years ago. So I wasn't facing the need to have to find ways to deal with students and things like that. So for me, it's been a quiet and productive period in which I got to do a lot of the things that I really like to do.
Yeah, wonderful. I suspect you continue to spend a lot of time outdoors.
I certainly do. I can step right out into nature from our house here. We live in the edge of the Granite Dells, which is a beautiful rock formation at the edge of Prescott, and I'm sure we'll share some pictures of that later.
Great. And for those who may not know that whole area, you're pretty much west central. Is that a reasonable description of where you are in the state of Arizona?
That's right. If you draw a line about halfway between Flagstaff and Phoenix, and then a little bit to the west, that's where we are.
Right there. So very accessible, but out of ways and a beautiful part of the state.
Well, it's kind of funny.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's kind of funny that I spent all those years in the Sutter Buttes trying to save a beautiful mountain range, and now here I am in Prescott trying to save another beautiful mountain range. So
that's an interesting parallel. Yeah. Because I've read some of your posts about the Dells and the work you've done there, and it needs saving too, right?
It does. It's national park quality, but it has been neglected because Arizona has a bounty of riches with the Grand Canyon and many other things like that, and Sedona, which is not far away.
Yeah.
But there were opportunities for it to have been a state park, and the city at that time, the mayor refused to even consider it. So we don't know why, but we're working really hard to try to save as much of it as we can.
So it's not even a state park, let alone a national park.
No, it's some of it is now city open space, but that's something I've been working on for the last almost 30 years to get the city to buy more of it for open space, right?
Oh my gosh, fascinating. I know here's the intersection of government and nature and environmentalism and oh gosh. Well, we had never met, but I feel like I know you from a lot of folks I've spoken to here in town. Of course, Joe Russer, I assume you worked with Joe at some point on the Middle Mountain hikes, and our friend and colleague, Sue Grau, who works with us at YubaSutterArts&Culture. And having just read through most of your book, Inland Island, the Sutter Buttes, I'll get you to sign it someday when I meet you in person. Incredible. I mean, everything about the Sutter Buttes. I've only been in the area for about 12 years, so compared to all the multi-generational families that are here, I still consider myself a newcomer. But this book, getting ready for this conversation, and I said, I really need to get this book finally. And I'd heard about it, and I'm so glad I did. You just take us through the geology and the botany and every aspect of animal life, from microorganisms to invertebrates to all the big sexy birds and mammals. And it's just like been an incredible process. So thank you for that. And that was 2004-ish.
That's correct.
Published,
that's right. Yeah,
beautiful book. But okay, so we've touched on the Buttes, we've touched on your life in Arizona for all these years. Where did you grow up? What's your origin story?
Well, I grew up north of Seattle, pretty close to Puget Sound. So I would walk on the beaches out there and see bald eagles flying over and foxes playing in the driftwood and things like that. So I've pretty much been a nature boy my whole life. But I got into scouting, and scouting was a wonderful liberal arts education. I was an Eagle Scout, and absolutely
former Scoutmaster.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
Oh, you can't beat it as far as education. And so my professional career as a naturalist started when I was 14, when I was hired to be a merit badge counselor at a scout camp teaching nature,
Wow.
forestry, soil and water conservation, wildlife management, bird study, reptile study, and fishing.
You
when I was
taught
14.
more merit badges than I did. So, all right. Good for you.
Yeah. So I started very young. I've been nature boy my whole life.
Wow. Oh, that's so great. I know it. Well, I'm going to digress here from the script for a moment and sort of lament, some of the recent goings on with the with Boy Scouts of America. It's been just tragic to see that. And
sure is. Yeah.
having been very involved in the child safety protection programs that have been so in place, embedded for so many years for Scout leadership, and of course, I think I read recently, haven't they just had the first class of female Eagle Scouts?
I don't know. I haven't heard that.
One. All the bankruptcy and all that stuff aside, they've actually gone multi-gender now. And one of my favorite trivia questions used to be, and because I have friends in the Girl Scout program, which is equally wonderful, but who can tell me the name of the highest rank you can achieve in Girl Scouts? Do you remember?
No, I never.
Everybody knows Eagle Scout. It's like a universal accolade for young people. It's the Gold Star Award. And, and so I don't know how all this has been resolved, but so now they have a female Eagle Scout. So there you have your Boy Scout trivia of the day. But I agree, great program.
In Eagles, the female is larger than the males and more aggressive, so maybe that's appropriate.
There you go, exactly. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I agree, though. The scouting program is tremendous, meant a lot to me and my family. So what about your education as a naturalist? So you were getting interested, obviously, in high school, and when did you really get serious and train?
Well, yes, as an outgrowth of my love of nature, I decided to enroll in a wildlife biology program at Washington State University.
Okay.
So I was a cougar. I went there for 4 years and studied with one of the direct students of Aldo Leopold.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was pretty exciting.
Did he teach there? You're talking San County Almanac, Aldo Leopold,
that's right? One of his students was my major professor.
Oh my gosh. Wow, what a connection.
Yeah, so I have that connection. Interestingly, later when I did my master's at the University of Arizona in wildlife biology, my advisor there was also a student of Aldo Leopold. So
where did he teach? I don't know the teaching part. I thought he was a government fish and game guy. I didn't realize he taught.
He had the first position professorship of wildlife management in the country, and it was at University of Wisconsin.
Oh, he's a Midwest guy. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
San County Almanac, of course, is placed in Wisconsin.
I'll be darned. Okay. Yeah. I just didn't know that.
He spent a lot of time in the Southwest, too. He was a forest ranger down here in the Southwest in his early career.
Oh,
so anyway,
if you don't know Aldo Leopold and you have any interest in nature, at least pick up San County Almanac, and a great read.
So after I got my undergraduate degree, it was the Vietnam War, and I got drafted. I was going to go straight for my doctorate in animal behavior at the University of Montana, but I got drafted, and so ended up going to Vietnam. Spent a couple of years in the Army. Then when I came back, I actually had summer jobs while I was an undergraduate at wildlife refuges in the West, the National Bison Range in Montana, now here in Southeast Oregon, and the Kenai National Moose Range up in Alaska.
Alaska, yeah.
So I came back to Fish and Wildlife Service after Vietnam, took a little break from academics, and then after a couple of years there, then I went to the University of Arizona, where I studied scaled quail for my master's degree, then went on to the University of Michigan. And I was well into the program there when I heard about the Sutter Buttes. A friend of mine actually was hired as a consultant by a landowner in the Sutter Buttes to find someone to manage that property, partially to keep it from becoming a state park. And so I came out in August of 76, I think it was. And you know what it's like in August. It was a drought year. Everything was dry and
brutal.
And it rained. When we were hiking around in the Buttes, it actually rained. So we said, okay, we packed up and we moved from Michigan out to the Sutter Buttes, and here we are.
So you did actually live here at one point. You weren't just
absolutely
studying. Okay, you were okay.
76 to 85.
Okay.
So, yeah, you bet I lived there. Yeah.
This was actually home. I know you did so much work, and shouldn't be a surprise that you actually set up residence here. So. Sure,
we lived in Calusa most of the time, but the first year we were there, we lived in a couple little cabins without electricity in Brockman Canyon in the Buttes.
Wow. So
But
yeah.
it was such a fire hazard. It was not safe to stay there.
Well, glad you made it through that experience. But yeah,
Yeah.
the whole thing about the Buttes fascinates me. With, I mean, all mostly private ownership of the land, and
Yeah.
but well cared for, I think, right? For the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, if you looked at the book in the last chapter, there have been other things that have occurred, quarries and golf courses
Right.
and
Right.
other encroachments of various kinds. But most of the ecosystem is still intact. And that's one thing that I've been certainly encouraging through my writing and through my talks and so forth, is to try to protect as much as possible of the whole range.
Nike bases and all that kind of stuff, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Can you believe it? Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It was Titan, I think it was Titan.
Titan, yeah, I forget which specific one. I know. Hard to keep
Right.
track of all those intercontinental ballistic missiles, right?
Yeah, right. Well, we're hoping that not everybody keeps track of them.
So did you finish your program in Michigan? You were at university or Michigan State?
I was at University of Michigan.
In Ann Arbor.
No, I got so involved with the Sutter Buttes and with other things that I thought it would just, at that point, be a distraction. I've got too many things going on anyway, so I never got the PhD. I had all but dissertation.
All but. It's funny, a theater friend of mine went to Michigan State, where my mother was from, Lansing, Michigan, and I lived there for a while. And he was a theater guy, and he did everything to get a doctorate in theater except his dissertation. Had some political issues with some. Anyway, total digression, but I mean,
well,
that
Sutter Buttes book is probably more work than a dissertation anyway.
Oh yeah, no kidding. I'd say you're qualified. Let's get you an honorary doctorate. It's about time, don't you think?
Well, I got hired at Prescott College to be a professor, so it didn't count against me.
Yeah, good. So what about your work? I mean, I knew you were an incredible photographer, and then also painting. Did you get formal training for photography or painting?
My preparation is being a naturalist, because it's all about seeing. It's all about seeing, really. And so, no, I didn't have time to take art classes when I was in high school or anything like that, because I was in music and productions, musicals and things like that, and a trombone player.
You do have a theater background, see? All right.
Yeah, some of that too. That's right. And then, of course, I was studying the sciences a lot as well, and I was involved in student government and things like that. So it wasn't until I got to Malheur Refuge the second summer of my college career. No, it was actually later than that. I think it was after Vietnam, when I came back to Malheur Refuge and worked there, that I decided that I really wanted to learn how to paint. And so I went into the little town of Burns, Oregon, and took, I think it was 5 evening workshops with a acrylic painter. And I caught on really fast, and that's it. So I'm mostly self-taught.
Really?
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah. Right.
Well, as I've mentioned to you earlier, I saw your watercolor of the wood ducks, and I was just knocked out. It was just like phenomenal.
I just submitted it to a competition today.
Let's look at those. It's just,
there it is.
The wood ducks are just so beautiful.
Oh yeah, thank you. It was really fun to work on those textures. It's a little bit of torture to spend all that time on the tree bark, but it's what makes it interesting.
That makes me think of, Audubon painting, and you painting every feather and, every little piece of bark. And it's like, oh, incredible. Well, that's an amazing story. Here's another one. Yeah. Now that's a red-tailed hawk.
Yeah, and that's, of course, with the Sutter Buttes in the background. And that's one I did years ago when I was actually in Calusa. And we had a wildlife art gallery in town. Initially, we started with one landowner, and it was called the West Butte Sanctuary Company. But after a couple of years of developing that program, we had a falling out with that particular landowner. And so we started our own gallery called the Hanging Judge. And we started our own trips out into the Buttes. And instead of having access just to one property, which we had originally with the one landowner who got us out there, within a couple of years, I had access to 40 properties in the Sutter Buttes. And so that program eventually evolved into Sutter Buttes Naturalist, and then finally into the Middle Mountain Foundation, which is now 2 organizations, the Middle Mountain Interpretive Hikes and the foundation that is a land trust.
Yes. Okay. And what is, I've heard legal minds talk about this, but the land trust, what does that involve and what are the benefits?
Sure. A land trust is a nonprofit that well, there's a number of things that they can do, but the primary thing is getting conservation easements. Conservation easements can either be purchased directly or they can be donated by the landowner. And what it does is it prohibits intensive development.
Okay.
Each agreement is individual. It may allow continuation of grazing. It may allow continuation of a house or two of the family or something like that, but it no longer can be sold for development. And so if they are paid for it, they get paid less than full market values if they were selling it, but they get to keep the land, and then it's under this conservation easement, so it won't be developed again. So it's a really neat way to protect ranch land, or to protect farmland, or to protect wild spaces.
Okay, so but it does put some restrictions on what the owners can do.
Exactly.
So what's their motivation for doing it? I mean, unless they're just really environmentally inclined, are there tax benefits, or?
Yeah, there are tax benefits in many cases. And then also it assures that if the parents die or something like that, that the land doesn't have to be sold or split up for the inheritance taxes. There's a variety of things like that. And some of them have true conservation wishes and issues as well. Okay.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I know since I've been here, I think there has been created a state park within the Buttes, but it's pretty much, what's the value of that? And isn't it pretty much landlocked by privately owned property, and there is no public access unless you're on one of the hikes? Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. It's a long, complicated story. Originally, the state was interested in acquiring land in the Sutter Buttes. In fact, it was their number one priority for acquisition. And that's why that one landowner back in the mid-'70s wanted to do something on his land to protect his land from being purchased by the state for a state park. And that's the origin of the West Butte Sanctuary Company, which evolved into all of this other stuff. In fact, when that happened, the state backed off and said, in fact, a couple of state park people came up and hiked with me in the Buttes, and he says, wow, thank heavens we didn't buy this, because you're doing such a good job. So it was a real interesting experiment in private land being used for public access. But that, of course, was just one property. And then we expanded it, like I said, to about 40 different landowners, large and small. Yeah. And I really wanted everybody there. I basically wanted to make sure that they got some compensation for that we carried the liability insurance. They didn't have to worry about that. And they would get some public recognition and things like that. Yeah. Eventually, though, one of the ranches was sold to the state. It was Peace Valley, beautiful spot.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there was still some opposition especially among the landowners who were cooperating with us for hikes, because they thought, wow, if they open up that state park, people won't respect the boundaries, and they'll be everywhere out there. Right. And that would defeat the purpose of our limited edition guided hikes that we always do for protecting the landscape and interpreting high quality.
Sure.
But they didn't do their homework right, and the access through the north side of Buttes was blocked by some of the landowners there. And so I think they have arrangements for a few guided hikes, and then some hikes have also, when I was there, we took some hikes in from the Dean Place near North Butte there, right into the Peace Valley area there. But one of the problems is that, not being an active ranch, it literally got overrun with feral pigs.
Oh, I hear about the pigs out there. I've been to a pig roast or two. It's but it's a big deal. They can't shoot enough of them to control it.
No, I know one fellow who's gone up there and has killed hundreds, maybe thousands over this time. I was actually around and talked to one of the landowners the day after they released 5 pigs up in the Buttes. And I said, "You did what?" Really? Yeah, we let some pigs go there. We caught them out on this ranch out in the Coast Range, and we brought them in. We thought it'd be fun for people to be able to hunt them. And I said, "Oh no, this could be a disaster." And of course it was. It is.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, really a bad move.
Because they damage the natural vegetation.
Oh, sure. They just dig everything up. Oh yeah, they're really destructive, and compete with the native wildlife and muddy up the springs, and they cause tremendous amounts of damage. So it was a big, big mistake.
Isn't there a domestic a goat out there? Is it Barbary sheep?
Yeah.
Are they still? Yeah. I haven't followed up on that. Are they still out there? Or?
I'm not sure right now because I haven't been out there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But the last time I was there in 2015, they were there. So I had a couple trips, 2013, 2015,
Yeah.
and they were there then.
The non-native species.
Another non-native. Well, if you look at most of California, it's filled with non-natives, including people.
Yeah, right, exactly. And yeah, pheasants,
Right.
starlings, and sparrows,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
all these other crazy critters. Wow.
Well, some of the big ecological problems out there are things like some of the thistles. The thistles are very, very invasive, and of course, the cattle don't eat them down, and so they'll eat the good, valuable grasses, but the thistles proliferate, and in places, even where grazing is now light, it's difficult to get through all the thistles. It takes some of the fun out of hiking there when you've got that.
Yeah, no kidding. I've seen those pictures. Yeah, people covered with them. It's tough. So
sure. Same with some of the grasses too are really nasty.
Sure. So Middle Mountain has continued with the hikes, but I don't think they're doing any this year again. I think they've decided to hold off till next year when we get the all clear, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah, I'm sure they're being prudent about that. And the range will be there. The range will be there long after people are gone. So
not going anywhere, right?
Right, they're not going anywhere.
So we're talking to you from your home in Arizona. How long have you lived in the Prescott area?
Came out here in 1991, so about 30 years.
Was it to take the position with the college, or?
That's right. I came here. I was freelancing before that, doing artwork and leading expeditions around the world. So that had started long before I came to Arizona. And of course, the Sutter Buttes, I'd go back there like a migrant bird in the spring and lead more hikes and things like that. So,
sure.
So I had a really good life, mixing photography, artwork, and writing and trip leading. But then my wife at the time said, maybe your mother was right. Maybe you ought to get a job.
Oh,
So I took a job as a professor at Prescott College.
Oh, wonderful. So tell us more about your work leading ecotourism expeditions around the world. So you actually started doing that before you started teaching at the college, or while you were there?
I started doing that the very first year I was involved with Sutter Buttes back in 1976. And when I moved to California, I had some contacts there who connected me with the California Academy of Sciences and with the owner of Nature Expeditions International. And I began doing programs and tours for both of them, starting first in Alaska and Baja with the whale watching trips.
Oh, yeah.
And then expanding to Africa, which is my favorite. But I've led trips all around the world now. And I've got another safari coming up in August to Tanzania. In fact, probably two of them. I just yesterday decided to set up a second one this fall.
So you were joking. You're really not retired. You're as busy as you've ever been, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think busier. Oh, yeah. I'm writing and photography and doing weekly columns called Wild Wednesday for Facebook and for the two groups here working on the Granite Dells. One is called Save the Dells, a political action committee, and one is called the Granite Dells Preservation Foundation, a nonprofit. I'm the founder of both.
Jay.
And so, yeah, busy as can be, but I really do love that. So I started leading. First trip to Africa was in 1979, and I've led many more. I was lucky enough also to lead the very first World Wildlife Fund trips to Madagascar.
That's the very first panda logo, right? World Wildlife Fund.
That's right.
Have the panda logo, sure.
That's right. And then the very first trips, ecotours from the United States to the national parks of Brazil. And so I'm kind of one of the founders or one of the pioneers of ecotourism. And I wrote a big chapter on that in a wildlife management book that I think you saw on my resume.
Yes, absolutely. And so that's that I wanted to just touch on that. So there really wasn't much of I'll call it an industry in terms of ecotourism. So you really were a founder of that whole notion of vacationing with a kind of a purpose, something a little more than just going out and lying on the beach.
Yeah.
I mean, this is activist tourism, if you will, and with a nature bent. Okay.
This is the alternative to mass tourism. Mass tourism can be pretty destructive.
Yeah.
Certainly it can bring in income to areas that sometimes need it, but if it's not carefully managed, it becomes really kind of like a Disneyfication or something of of the landscape. So ecotourism is something that gives back to the people and to the land. It has a very conscious ethic. It involves education. It's basically an international extension of what we always did in the Sutter Buttes.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
I love the idea. It's just really
Yeah.
incredible. I was with an orchid expert recently who speaking of over here in Auburn, not far from us, Alan Cook, and he talks about traveling to Brazil to teach Brazilians about their orchids. So it's sort of an interesting perspective. But you all who travel the world with this knowledge, it's just amazing. And thanks for taking some people along, right?
Absolutely. And then of course, I've expanded upon that by working with different organizations, which I'm sure you're going to come to anyway. One is called Artists and Biologists Unite for Nature, or ABUN. And that's a group of artists from all around the world that donate their artwork in various ways to help conservation projects here, there, and everywhere in the world, whether it be mountain gorillas. And I actually provided hundreds of my photos for references for the artists for Mountain Gorilla Project, Windy National Park in Uganda. Did the same thing here for the Granadelles. I got hundreds of artists to contribute their artwork to the Granadelles. I'm going to be using that, having auctions and so forth. That's been delayed by the pandemic.
Sure.
But we're going to have an online auction next month. And then when we can, we'll have an in-person auction. And all this beautiful artwork will be used to help raise money to protect the
wonderful
area.
For all those worthwhile causes.
And then we also try to make sure that the local people really are aware of what they've got and that it is important, not just to them, but to the whole world. And so we try to find ways to support them. For example, in Uganda, we're helping them with water wells and with planting and tree planting and other things like that, because if the people can't survive, they will degrade the national parks and the forests. And so, there's a lot of that going on. Convincing
them. The one I'd always heard, for years and years, of course, is those elephants are worth a lot more alive than they are dead for their ivory, right? I mean, and you show that economic model, and it's like, wow, people will pay to see them alive. And once you've sold that last ounce of ivory, that revenue stream is over. Keep them going, and you got a real career there.
Sure. But you have to realize the animals have impacts on the people. So you have to find ways to make it worth their while.
Yes. No, absolutely. If you don't mind, just because I've always been intrigued, and I don't think I've ever met anybody who's been to Madagascar. What I've heard about it is it's incredibly diverse, but also one of the most environmentally devastated countries on the planet. Is that true? Is that fair? Or?
Yeah, that's fair. It's really an unfortunate accident of geology in some ways. Madagascar, first of all, wasn't colonized by people until fairly late compared to most other places. There were colonists from Melanesia and also from parts of Africa, but not until maybe around the time of Christ, really late in historical times. But they brought land use patterns that worked fine in the landscapes where they had lived. For example, burning to increase the green bite, the growth of fresh grass for the cattle and things like that. But in Madagascar, the soils are really old laterite, similar to what you might find in parts of Georgia, where under tropical conditions in the past, it leached all the nutrients out of the soil. So when fire goes through, then this land just erodes. Like Madagascar is bleeding into the sea with all this stuff, erosion that goes off. And then, of course, Madagascar had, like as you said, such tremendous diversity, and as habitat is lost, they're losing species. Now, it's interesting that when I first went to Madagascar with that first World Wildlife Fund trip, there were 30 known species of lemurs, for example.
Right.
There were 13 species of larger lemurs that people had exterminated in that short period of time that people had been there, plus the elephant birds. But anyway, there were 30 species known. Now there's 100 species known, and it's because they realized that many of these isolated populations really are distinctive from others, and so they've split a lot of other species. And they found a couple of new ones as well. But there's 5 whole families of birds that are found nowhere else in the world.
Only on Madagascar. That's fascinating.
Yeah, only on that. 5 whole families of birds. And then, of course, it has tenrecs, which are little spiny hedgehog-like things. It has the the many kinds of lemurs, which there's only one species of lemur occurs on the Comoros, an island nearby, but it's the only place in the world, even though there are fossil lemurs in North America.
Oh,
Way on that.
who knew?
So one of the things that I try to do when I'm leading these trips is to really provide a bigger context, both an ecological context, a historical context as well. So my trips are pretty in depth, and that's what I like. And so the people sort of self-select to go on these trips because they want to learn something, and they see more than they would otherwise too. So that's what I do.
Do you give a test at the end of the trip?
No, not really.
How large a group do you usually take?
I limited it to 12 on the safari.
So this is a real intimate, hands-on experience. Wow.
It's a really hands-on experience. And with that, we'll take 3 vehicles so that people have plenty of elbow room for photography, for observing. We're connected by radios. And then I rotate among the 3 vehicles so that they get equal amount of time with me. And there are times when we're walking and, of course, in the camps, and other times that I'll do teaching. And I'm actually working with one of my former master's students who's from Tanzania. Oh. And so we've set up a really good safari business there. And as I said, just yesterday, I decided to set up a second trip because the first one filled. Wow. And more people wanted to go. So I'm going to have another trip coming up after that.
Good for you. Oh, that's incredible. Yeah. Just incredible. So what else are you working on? You've got your conservation programs going. You've got ecotourism trips. Any other passion projects underway? Or?
Well, yeah, actually, probably too many.
Yeah, right. That's okay.
I've been doing these weekly columns for Facebook, and they're much more than a typical Facebook post. They're usually 8 to 10 photographs with text associated with it. So it takes my followers a little time to go through it all. But I'll choose different subjects every week. Like tomorrow, I'm doing Rufous Crowned Sparrow. I've already got it done this morning, but Rufous Crowned Sparrow is kind of a secretive little bird, and they're in the Sutter Buttes. It's a lot of people. I found several nests of them there, but it's not a well-known bird. So, but then I talk about plants. I talk about different kind of mammals, birds, ecosystems. Are these the
posts I see on this is your personal Facebook page?
Yeah, but I also posted on Save the Dells and the Granite Dells Preservation Foundation.
Save the Dells. I'm writing this down. So, okay.
Yeah, Save the Dells and the Granite Dells Preservation Foundation. Okay. Then I do a similar column for the Friends of the Buenos Aires National Wildlife Refuge down on the border. Oh. It's another one of the places in the Sky Islands. I've done a lot of work in the Sky Islands. I've had students who did their master's degrees down there. That's the mountain ranges in southern Arizona into New Mexico and Sonora and Chihuahua. There's about 40 mountain ranges there. I have some sort of connection with mountain ranges.
You do,
like the Sutter Buttes, the Granite Dells, and the Sky Islands. And so I've been doing a lot of research and writing about that area too. And several of these projects may evolve into books. I certainly have the photographs. I have the background. Wow. So if I live long enough, there's going to be a lot more creative stuff coming out.
We're counting on it, Walt. Come on.
I hope so.
Oh, gosh. We've kind of touched on this, but I want to expand the whole notion of, I want to connect now the science part of what you do with the art part and look at it globally. You know, that connection between the art that you've done and you and others have created as a component of education and activism. And, you know, why do we care about losing a species? You know, here in California, folks make a joke out of the Delta smelt. You know, why do we care about this humble fish? You know, it doesn't matter that it may contain the cure to cancer, but let's ignore it and do what we want to do and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, you know the story. But talk about art as part of environmental activism and how it's impacted your work and spreading the word and the gospel out there about nature. Yeah.
In some of the hints that you sent me to prepare for this, you asked something about what is my favorite word or concept, and it's beauty. And I think that the beauty of nature can be expressed so well by artistic interpretation. It's also a way of sharing that and carrying an experience that might be just ephemeral and carrying it on into the future so that you can share that passion and that love. When I start painting, I usually paint the eyes of the animal first because that's where the life appears to reside. And, you know, dead eyes just don't do anything for anybody.
No, they got to be right. That's because you're looking right into the soul there, right?
exactly. So I do the eyes first, and then I begin to interact with the piece when I do it. It's a little bit mystical, I suppose, but that helps to carry me through on that. And so I think for as long as there have been people, there have been people who want to interpret what they see, and all over the world we have this amazing cave art or rock art or wall art. I live in the Southwest where it's just everywhere. There's rock art everywhere here. It's just amazing. I've seen it in Australia when I was leading an eco trip over there. Right. Some of the artwork there is just phenomenal. It has such a connection. And so I think artists in general are trying to relate to something that they've experienced that has moved them. And then in turn, it can help to move and motivate other people. Think about Ducks Unlimited, which is basically a hunting organization.
Right.
But they raise most of the money that they use for protecting habitat in Canada, waterfowl habitat in Canada, through these big auctions, art auctions and things like that, that people come get mildly drunk and spend a lot of money on artwork. And it has saved a ton of habitat that the governments never could have afforded to do. So
we want to have ducks to shoot at next fall. We got to do our thing the rest of the year, right?
Yeah. So artists like myself donate things to organizations like Ducks Unlimited or to, I did a couple of paintings, one of a colobus monkey and one of a chimpanzee for Bwindi, the national park in Uganda, where the mountain gorillas occur, over half the world's population. And I've put it out there that I'll give anyone who donates at least $1,000 to the Bwindi National Park project that we're sponsoring. I'll give them those paintings, those originals. Wow. So
the colobus is that pretty black and white one, the colobus.
Yeah, it's an amazing animal.
I know, they're fabulous.
Yeah, we see them on our safaris too, and they're just amazing. So,
in the wild, I've only seen them in zoos, but I love them.
We'll have to talk. I'll get you to sign up on my next safari.
Oh man, I'm telling you, sure.
Yeah, then you could go back and you can do. You can read that book by David Reed.
Yeah, right.
About, Waters of the Sandjan. It's a historical novel about the Maasai.
Oh, no kidding.
It's good.
Oh, that's what you did tell me about that. The other David Reed. That's right.
Yeah, there's another David Reed.
Yes. Same spelling, R-E-A-D. Isn't that funny?
That's right.
Hey. Yeah. Well, so all that work and celebrating nature through art and hopefully, moving the dial in the right direction, but now facing, global climate change issues, and with so many people in leadership positions still not quite catching on with that whole notion. It's like, this is just the natural cycle of things. Man is not having any impact at all with all the fossil fuels and everything. I mean, how do you address those issues from the side? I'm just a regular guy who has a passion for nature. You're a trained scientist. How do you try to offset that mindset?
Well, it's a challenge. The science is there. Climate change is occurring at a really rapid level right now, and the consequences of it are dire, potentially dire if we don't do something very quickly. There is so much geological evidence about what happens when you pass certain thresholds with carbon dioxide concentrations and changing climate like this. If we think our international problems are large now, wait 10, 20, 30 years at the rate we're going, and they will be unmanageable, completely unmanageable. So people are sticking their heads in the sand if they don't acknowledge that these things are there. It's really unfortunate. I can't understand how, but science has become politicized. That is, at least some people have politicized it and refuse to believe what's right in front of their eyes. And they're more willing to believe things that someone tells them than actually to do the critical thinking that it takes to figure out what's going on. So it's a huge issue, and it's something we have to work on all the time.
And you're absolutely right, whether it's the science around the vaccines and the pandemic or the environment. And it's so obvious there's an impact with what we're doing. And if we can do it better and cleaner, why in the heck wouldn't we?
Absolutely.
We generally in our work avoid politics, but in this particular case, we're making an exception. So come on, folks, listen up. This is important. Let's at least listen and try to understand the issues and be a little more open-minded maybe than sometimes we are. So
you're exactly right. It's really not politics. This is common sense. This is common sense that smart people have worked a long time to prove to us. It's not a theory in the speculation sense. It's well-supported evidence. So it shouldn't be political at all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been interesting to watch this last couple of years, you know, the young woman Greta Thunberg, and, you know, and just how people love to hate her, you know, and I don't know I don't know her whole story and what motivated her to get involved on an international level, but gosh, you know, got to listen to the children because they will lead us, right, at some point. So, yeah. And
we sure need that. It's a wake-up call. Yeah, we need the wake-up call for sure.
Gosh, with so much craziness in the world.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for what you've done in the cause of preservation. And
Absolutely.
We talked earlier about my childhood hero, John James Audubon, the great bird painter. And, you know, of course, he killed most of the birds that he painted, and to have study skins available. And you know, I often think of the story of the passenger pigeon in his journals that I have, and reading those, and the description of the 500 million bird flocks that would fly over, and the market hunters would hold up a stick and the birds would fly into it, and they just collect the dead and wounded off the ground and take the pigeons to market and sell them. And today we have how many passenger pigeons? None.
Exactly.
You know, the story of Martha, the last one who died in the, I think, Cincinnati Zoo in the early 1900s. And,
you're well prepared. Would you be willing to show the painting of the golden eagle on the rock wall?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's look at some beautiful paintings and photographs. We can sit here and gab forever. Let's motivate some people to get more involved and more environmentally aware through art.
Yeah.
Is this a quiz? California poppies. The Dells.
Oh, that's the view from my house there. That's Granite Dell. That's the view from my house.
We'll go back.
That is too. Yeah.
That the one?
No, I want the painting of the golden eagle on the rock wall.
That's the view from your deck, though, right?
That's right. Yeah. Should be in there. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I spent a long time in a flight cage in Boise, Idaho at the World Center of Birds of Prey, where I was able to study several eagles in an open flight cage. And so I used my reference.
Literally just a huge cage where they have some ability to fly?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was sitting in the cage with the birds.
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
Up close and personal with them. But that rock wall and the little fence lizard there are directly from the Sutter Buttes. You can see a little fence lizard down on the right. And so this is anatomically correct. It's got andesite with the lichens that are there. Okay. And so it's a bit of a story about the Sutter Buttes. The fact that eagles can still nest there, golden eagles still nest there, several pairs, in fact, requires a pretty extensive range. And that's one of the things that humans have been doing with their population explosion, is just fragmenting habitat to the point where it can't support the higher level predators or the diversity that was there before. So the fact that golden eagles nest in the Sutter Buttes is a tribute to good land management and to the fact that the range is still mostly intact.
Have you been involved with the California Condor program at all?
No, I've been following, of course, but I have not.
I have too all my life, and very early on, we're talking late 70s, even before I graduated high school, I had a teacher that took me on one of the California Condor counts when they were still debating. We were in Ventura County, Sespe Gorge, and up in there. And I've always been fascinated. Of course, they were still trying to decide whether to try to let them continue in the wild, or, you know, the story, round them all up and breed them in captivity. And capturing them and breeding in captivity, of course, won the day. And now there are several hundred of them out there. Don't you have some in Arizona now? Condors?
We do, yeah. It's pretty easy to see them at the Grand Canyon.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't know how far out in Arizona they were, but I heard they were reintroduced.
That's right. And we like to say repatriated, because that means putting them back where they were found. And
they were
reintroduced. Sounds like they may have been introduced in the first place, which they were not.
Yes. No. I knew they were they had a much broader range than just California. They got the name, so whatever. But yeah, what a magnificent bird, and to see it in the wild. And I'm just to have followed all my life that story and that successful repatriation program. It's been something else, just something else. That and the whooping cranes and. There are some success stories.
That's right.
Now, if we
And
could
I'm
just
glad
find
of
some
that.
damn ivory-billed woodpeckers, I'd really be happy. But,
Well, if you go to the local lakes, you can find ivory-billed mudpeckers. That's what
what's,
I call the American coot.
oh, okay. Plenty of those. Plenty of those.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Oh, how exciting.
Yeah.
What else? Any other of your, there's so many, I don't even know where to start, Walt. Any other organizations you want to highlight or other
Sure.
projects? Yeah, please take me through it.
Well, another organization that I'm really proud to be a part of is Artists for Conservation, AFC. In fact, I even include that in my email address because it's a international group. You have to be juried into the group,
Oh,
and all the artists there have to prove that they work for conservation in some way or another. So their work has to be of the highest technical standard artistically, but then it also has to serve conservation. And I went to, so I got accepted and actually was Artist of the Month a couple months after I was accepted in there, which was pretty nice. And went to their show in Vancouver, BC. It had to be limited last year. We couldn't go to Canada. Right. Unfortunately, I had a painting that was accepted in it then too. But the year before, I went to Vancouver, BC, and met wonderful artists from all over the world, and they're doing amazing things for conservation. So again, it's one of those really amazing intersections of art and conservation and science.
I absolutely love that, because again, when that occurred to me, it's like duh, and learning more about you and your art, it's like, oh gee, this is going to be an amazing conversation.
Well, I think we in Artists for Conservation all think that art has to be something more than just decoration. Art has to serve a purpose. It has to have some educational value, inspirational value, and it has to give back to nature.
I didn't realize in preparing that you had been a veteran, and we've done a number of veteran art projects as well. So I might have to loop you in on something there in the future to demonstrate, an artistic involvement after that experience. So, incredible. I guess we've kind of answered the question. I was going to say, what's the greatest environmental challenge of our day? And certainly it's different from region to region, but globally, I guess it is the climate change issue and kind of understanding the human component, right? Isn't that what it is? That yes, there are cyclical trends. I mean, the last glacial ice age was only 10,000 years ago. Let's be honest, but the fact that we could be having an impact just needs to be addressed in a very honest, I think, manner. And there's signs of hope. I look for those.
Oh, we do.
I've been to Alaska and up close to the Arctic. I want the polar bears to survive for the next generation.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a challenge for some of these species for sure, because it's happening on such a rapid timescale.
Well, in the loss of species, and I think you address this to some extent in your book, and every time I read an article about, the loss of species that we haven't even identified yet. And you think about that, and you go, well, there's, I don't know, what are there, 9,000 species of birds or something in that range, and I forget the number of mammals. Again, those really high-profile critters, but you look at the invertebrates and microorganisms, and again, which one holds the key that unlocks the cure to cancer? I mean, I think of that. I don't mean to be facetious at all, but that's isn't that part of the deal? We don't know what we have until it's gone, kind of a mentality.
Well, yeah, there's those utilitarian arguments, so many different ways that we can look at what we can get out of it. Of course, that's anthropocentric. That's a human-centered viewpoint.
Right.
With another perspective would be that everything has a right to exist as it is. But even maybe more profound would be the whole fact that our ecosystems are all interconnected and functioning, and to mess with those ecosystems to the point where they stop being functional. And there's real serious concern with ocean, the CO2. It's just not just a matter of the climate warming and then consequently changing the habitable zones or the sea levels rising, but also the acidification of the ocean is wiping out everything. Everything with shells is going to be at risk. And that's a lot. And the coral reefs are at risk. I'm reading a pretty interesting book about the 5 great extinctions in the past. And it's pretty sobering. Earth has come very close to losing all life several times.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
just and you get a positive feedback loop that can just drive things completely out of control. And it would be a hellscape if that happened. And it's taken millions of years in each cases after those great extinctions for life to come back in a different form. Of course, one of them that we think about is the proliferation of mammals after the extinction of the dinosaurs. And birds, of course, are the dinosaurs that survived. They're the ones that made it through that bottleneck. But it takes millions and millions of years. And if we care at all about humans and human habitation and so forth, why aren't we being a little bit more insightful about what it could do to us?
Absolutely. Well said. Can't do it any better than that.
Yeah.
Well, with your permission, you alluded to one of our final questions, but I do like to go through these kind of fun questions at the end of each conversation with our guests.
Sure.
And just when we never know what else might come up that we missed. But well, let's start. We kind of did this already, but your favorite word again?
Beauty.
Beauty.
It's all about beauty.
How about your least favorite word?
The word lay, because it's so often misused. Like people say,
Lay.
I'm going to lay down. But lay requires an object. So if you lay down, it's like you're ovipositing feathers. And that's not comfortable.
That's right. That's good. That's a good way to remember lay versus lie. Yeah. Thank you. Right. Thank you, Professor Anderson, for our English lesson. Oh, that's great. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Well, there are many things, but I think I'll just single out birdsong. Birdsong is such an amazing form of communication, and it links right in with beauty at the same time.
That's nice. How many can you identify by sound alone? Any idea?
Well, most North American birds and quite a few elsewhere in the world. Yeah,
you're one of those guys. I've got to get more serious about my bird studies. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I figured.
Yeah. I identify most North American birds by sound before I see them.
Wow. I have it on my iPro bird app. You know, where you can pull up the range and the actual sound recording. Yeah. I'm working on it.
It's useful. Okay, good.
What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Well, it's something we talked about before, and I'd call it stubborn ignorance, refusal to listen to the facts.
Yeah. Yep. All right. A little edgy here. What's your favorite curse word?
Chrysothamnus nauseosus. That's my range management. Yeah, that's Latin for rubber rabbit brush. My range management professor, when he was frustrated, he would say Chrysothamnus nauseosus. And we got a big kick out of that, so I haven't forgotten that.
I can honestly say that's the first time that has been chosen as a favorite curse word on this program. We've been doing this for about a year.
That's right.
Thanks for being original in more ways than one, but
sure.
That's too funny. Yeah, we didn't even talk about the Latin naming of animals and organisms and that whole process. I know that's another whole.
Yeah.
Was it Carl Linnaeus that created that system?
Yeah. He started a good system. It's been modified a lot, but it gives us something we can communicate in different languages.
Yeah, that's the whole point of it, right? Yeah, this critter is this Corvus corax. Isn't that the raven for whether it's this country or that country? Yeah, okay. It's one of the few I remember. Okay, I'll quit. I'll quit while I'm ahead. Yeah. What sound or noise do you love?
Well, there are many, of course. Being a naturalist, I love all the sounds of nature, but I'll choose two: that descending, beautiful song of the canyon wren, and the roar of a lion.
Oh, I know the roar of the lion well. I've heard other wrens. I don't know that I've heard the canyon wren.
Oh yeah, they're out there in the buttes. So. Something like that. Just beautiful.
Wonderful. And I know the lion roar, because we talked about involvement in Boy Scouting, and back when I lived in Washington, D.C., we had scout campouts at the National Zoo. And we were first time I heard it, we were on a stretch of lawn. We had our little tent set up, small group. It wasn't the whole pack, but hearing the lions at night, it's like, I'm sure it'd be even better in the wild, but that was pretty special.
Yeah. It's an amazing sound.
You still get the sense of it. Of course, that and growing up, I was in Miami till I was 14 and camping in the Everglades and hearing the alligators.
Oh, sure.
that was pretty impressive too. So anyway,
I
I'm sorry.
bet
This is
so.
not about me. Sorry to digress. What sound or noise do you hate?
Weed eaters.
Ah, I hear you. Good one.
Yeah.
What profession other than your own would you like or would you like to have attempted?
I don't even want to think about that because I'm too busy already.
Yeah, and I think you've had a charmed life.
Yeah, that's for sure.
What profession would you not like to pursue?
Shoe salesman.
You thought about that in advance.
Yeah, sure.
Oh gosh. And last, but certainly not least, if heaven exists, Walt, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Welcome to heaven, where you peacefully join millions of other living and extinct species in a harmonious ecosystem.
Perfect. Oh gosh. That's why I send these out in advance.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. Any other closing thoughts before we wrap it up, Walt, for our adoring public?
No, it's been a lot of fun to talk with you, and
Oh,
I'm glad that somehow you reached me and that I have a chance to connect back to an area that's very important to me.
oh, thank you, Sue Grau, and thanks for everything you've done here. Hey, you know, we can't close without this showing off our special effects. Let's get that that upward pan on that incredible image behind you. Reveal what's at the
Oh,
top of
sure.
that tree.
Sure.
Oh,
It's a bald eagle taking off. Yeah.
where was that taken?
At Willow Lake, real close to where we live here.
That's I saw that on the map. Yeah, it's like right there.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, right there.
Well, maybe I'll come visit someday. I'd love to meet you in person and
You
continue
should.
the conversation, or I'll see you and meet you in Africa.
That sounds great.
Even better. Thanks so
All
much,
right.
Walt. Thanks for your
You're
lifetime
welcome.
of commitment to the environment. Stay safe, be well. Thanks to
Sure.
our technical support team, producer Abby Cecina, and our technical directors, Alex Cecina and Shante Arroyo. Until next time, that's it for Artist Alchemy. Don't forget to tune in 2 weeks, and our guests will be Diane Davis and Indy McCarthy talking about art and dance and art therapy. Also, Alondra Baines, who's actually in training in college to become an art therapist. So see you then, and stay connected. Follow Yuba Sutter Arts and Culture on Facebook and Instagram, or go to YubaSutterArts.org for more about what's going on in Yuba Sutter in terms of art and culture. Until next time, we'll see you then. Bye. Thanks again, Walt.
Sure.